For the past 45 years, the music man of BC has been Bruce Allen. His artists have filled the clubs, the airwaves, theaters, and arenas around the world. Thank you for joining us today and having a conversation, especially about the music world.
The music world, which is in total chaos right now, but
I'm sure
we
it
do
is.
the best we can.
Was it always in your blood, even as a kid? Did you know that music was something that was going to be your passion?
I knew that I liked it. I collected records probably from the 50s and was very knowledgeable about the music that was going around town, went to all the shows. But I never thought I'd be in it because I thought the only way I could think about being in it when you're a young person is can you play a musical instrument or can you sing a song? And I can't either do both. I can't do either of those. So I just thought I'll just be a fan. And then all of a sudden, an opportunity opened up for me, and I kind of took it, and it blew up to this thing.
And you said a break came along. Now, how does that happen when you're a young kid?
And there's a guy called Bill Lassiter. He used to play for BC Lions. And he had a club out on Broadway and commercial. It's called Lassiter's Den. And he said, listen, we're dying out there. Can you come and see the band? So I went out to see the band, and they were really playing great material there, but they were playing English-based material. It's in the 60s. So they were playing the Beatles, they were playing the Walker Brothers, they were playing the Hollies, they were playing all that stuff. Where Vancouver was built really on horn bands, soul bands with black frontmen. And so this was the only band that was doing that stuff in Vancouver. People came, but they weren't that good as a show. So I said, I can help these guys. I've seen these bands. I can sit down, have a talk to them, and turn them around into a decent, really good dance band. Well, that's what they were. They were playing for dance music. They were playing 5 sets a night or 4 sets a night for all these people so they could dance. And people liked it because it was very current. One day, Roger Gibson, who ran Pharaoh's Retreat, he asked me if I could play his club. And so I thought about it for a couple of days. And I remember when I was in university, I kind of wanted to be Jimmy Hoffa. And I thought, well, this is a bit of a wedge for me to get in. If I can move this band and keep Lassiter's Den and put somebody else in there, just keep it rolling, I'll have 2 clubs. So I did that. So then and other people came. How can I get to your band? And I used them went from band to band to band. By the time in the 70s, I had 17 clubs I was booking downtown exclusively.
When you had these kind of raw bands, what was your special talent that you could turn them around?
They were good bands, but they were not playing the right music. And they knew they had to change, so they changed on their own. They were good players. And we did well. Those bands did well, Carol. Those bands were making $1,500 to $2,500 a week in clubs. If you play in clubs now, you're making $500 or whatever they'll give you at the door. Okay, and so we had a good business. The bands were making money. Everybody was making money, and we had control of the market. And I thought, I'm home free now. I'll do this forever. But like I said, Randy Bachman showed up.
Tell me the story of Randy showing up.
Randy Bachman got kicked out of the Guess Who. He was a Mormon, and he couldn't really relate to what was really going on with the rest of the guys on the bus.
Like what? Drugs?
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was the business. Okay, and he had got married, and he'd embraced the Mormon faith, and it was a problem. And he and Burton clashed over that. Burton Cummings clashed over that, the lead singer. And Randy decided to quit. I can't put up with this, and the other guys weren't going with him, so he quit. But because there was outside of BC, there was a combine of agents that controlled the rest of the country for bands and shows and stuff like that. He found out the manager of the Guess Who told them, don't ever work with Randy, and they listened to him because Burton Cummings and the Guess Who were a big money-making product when they went out, much more than the bar bands were. They'd be working for maybe $25,000 a night or whatever the money was in that time. And so Randy couldn't figure out where to work. Somebody told him to phone me. So he phoned me. He said, listen, I'm Randy Bachman, told me this story. I know who he was, of course. And he said, I need some work. Can you help me? Because he was supporting the whole band he had, because he had money, but he wasn't getting work, but he was trying to keep these guys alive, to stay the band. There were 3 brothers and Fred Turner. And I said, I don't know. He said, well, listen, we're going to play a job up in Fort McMurray. He says, can you come up and see us? I've never been to Fort McMurray. So I said, okay, I'll fly up and see you. And so I went up there and watched the show. And, he played all the Guess Who hits. And Fred Turner sang. He was doing all the right things. And I said, yeah, I can use you, Randy, in Vancouver. I'll take you and you can work there. So he came into town, he worked, Pharaoh's Retreat, all the stuff that we all did, and played high school bands and high school shows and universities, stuff like that. And then, of course, he wanted to make another record. Of course, he wanted to be bigger than that because he'd been big at a certain level. And he started recording stuff. And he finally came to me and he said, listen, could you help me make a deal on this with this record? I said, well, you can do it yourself. You've done it before. You know who to talk to. It's hard for me to go in there and say, I want. You can say they want. It's easy for that. He says, I'll guide you, which he did. He said, I'll guide you. We'll talk. He says, but you got to do the talking because you're better than I am at it, or will be. And I said, okay. So off we went, and we got rejected by 31 labels. At the time, there's lots of record labels. They got rejected.
Blacklisted, do you think? Like, why was he getting rejected?
Rejected. They just didn't think it would work. They weren't going to gamble on a guy who's 280 pounds as a front man. They weren't going to gamble on that. Fred was a big guy. Randy was a big guy. Where's the sex? And one guy, Charlie Fash, in Chicago at Mercury Records, heard it and said, I like this. Can I come up and see you guys? So I said, I better get a good job for him. And I put him into the cave at the time. And so it's good seating, good lighting, good, everybody could see him. And Charlie looked at him and said, I'll bet on you guys. Let's make a deal with Mercury Records. I didn't even know about Mercury Records. I knew of it, but it wasn't even a band. It wasn't even Los Angeles. It wasn't in New York. It was in Chicago. So we made this deal with Mercury Records, and we, put out a record, and it caught. And the reason it caught is because Randy Bachman was smart enough to say, listen, I know the game. We got to do everything. We got to be working all the time. We got to get on the road and basically stay on the road. So, and we did. I drove back and forth in a car 9 times between here and Boston. Okay, and with them in the car. Randy didn't want a bus anymore because he remembers one time we went into trail, the bus lost its brakes going down the hill, and he had to take his guitar in his arms and roll out into the snowbank. And he said, I don't want to be on a bus anymore, so we didn't travel by bus, we traveled by car, 2 cars, with the equipment being towed with the other one. And we drove around the country and played everything we could and did everything we could and paid off everybody we could. And all of a sudden, he was a big rock act, and very big at that time. In 1975, he sold more records than anybody else in North America. So, big act at one time.
How would you describe your role during all of that? What were you? You were
the first 18 months.
Booker, the psychologist?
I'm the manager. You're always a psychologist. But my role at that time was just to hang on. Okay, I don't know this. Okay, I'm trying to make it up on the fly here. I knew that the rest of the rock and roll stuff was going on away from Randy. But I knew that if I roomed with him all the time, he'd have somebody to talk to and not discover what's going on with the rest of the boys, right? So I did. Roomed with him. Sat beside him in the car. Never left his side. Learned and gobbled up all that information I could because it was just learning on the fly. And we got it together, and then we did good. And we got involved with promoters who I'm still involved with today, who broke Bryan Adams, who broke Michael Bublé, these guys. Same team. I've been with them for 50 years. And it's a real big success story for this country, and maybe for other countries also, but it's a big deal for us to have broken that many acts out of one office down here in Skid Row.
How did you make the first connection with Bryan Adams?
Came into the office to me. It was after Loverboy was hot at the time, and Randy was still doing what he's doing. And he came into the office, and we had a talk. And he said, if I go with you, I'll be the biggest act you ever had. I said, he's talking to me about that. But, I liked it. We had some arguments. I can remember I got the arguments over the publishing deal one time, and he was arguing with me, and I just got so angry. I kicked the garbage can, those tin garbage cans out, those old tickets. He just caught it on the fly, put it down beside him, and kept on talking. I keep that garbage can there right beside me still to this day, with a dent in it. But so we made the deal with Bryan, and the rest is history on him. We got a first record he got out of the box out at A&M Records was all right. Second was a little better, and the third one, bang, he cuts like a knife. He's off.
So with Bryan Adams, he obviously is such a huge star internationally these days,
yeah.
And started with you in that format. But It takes more than just talent to be that successful, surely. Like,
Well,
what does it take to be a real star?
Well, it's easy when they're young because they're driven. Okay, the thing, Brian was so driven. Okay, this guy's still driven today. He'll play 5 shows a week. He loves it. Okay, and he was driven to succeed. And he just won't be turned down. He won't. You can't say no to Brian Adams. You can say no, but then he'll make it better. He'll learn from you, and he'll do it. And he was just he's a tremendous guy to work for because he's indefatigable. Now he's getting older. Now he's in his 60s. But at the time when you're coming up, Brian Adams was killing machine.
There's a lovely story about you being with Michael Bublé in Singapore.
Yeah.
And you came back to see Brian?
Yeah, Brian was playing at the arena across the street, Rogers Arena. And it was a homecoming thing. They're always kind of a homecoming thing for him because he's just not here that much anymore. And it was weird. It was bothering me because I'd seen every show he'd ever played here, of course. And he had said to somebody, "It's going to be weird tonight. This is the first time I've ever played Vancouver without Bruce here." And I got told about that. One of my staff heard it.
And you're in Singapore at that time?
Yeah, in Singapore. So I got up. I said, "See if we can get me to get back home in time to see the show tomorrow night." So the girls did, and I got on a plane, flew back to Vancouver, got there into the arena here about 4 o'clock, went into his dressing room, sat there, started doing what I was doing. He didn't think I'd come. Walked in, he couldn't believe it. I said, "Brian, I never miss you when you play Vancouver." And it's quite emotional for the both of us, because I think all these acts, they're all my sons in a way, my family. And I think the family always wants to make sure that, where do I stand in that family? So then I got on the plane the next morning, flew back to Singapore, did the Bublé stuff. These guys really mean a lot to me. I mean, it's been the focus of my life for a long time. I think a lot of people around me that were close to me sometimes paid the price for that. But that's what it took.
Yeah, great friendship for you and Brian for sure.
Yeah.
Michael probably.
Michael, yes, the same. I think still with the Loverboy guys, phone me up all the time when I get into some problem. Their name's Loverboy, and Drake just came out with the Loverboy album, and Drake says he wants them to get rid of that name because it's his name now. And they say, "What should I do?" And I said, "Well, phone your manager." And I said, he said, "Well, no, he doesn't know what to do. What should we do?" So, they still call, and I love those guys. I loved all those guys. They were my kids. There's a time though when it's over.
That's sad.
No, but it is. It's just the way the business is. It's a big battle when, Brian's, at a certain age, and Bruce Springsteen's of a certain age, and Sting's at a certain age, and stuff like that. And the guy who struggles with it, I think, the most is probably Bono, because what they want to be really is relevant, and they're not really relevant to the time. What's relevant to the time right now is Drake, and is Justin Bieber, and is Shawn Mendes, and all these guys, young people. That people are embracing those people. That's their people. But the guys who are still selling the tickets are those guys that were big years ago. But the relevancy isn't the same. It's hard to get on the radio. If you look at the radio top 20 charts, top 30 charts, pretty young. I mean, it's hard to find somebody. Like somebody came with a great song with me the other day. This girl sang great. The song's good. Everything's good, but she's 30.
30 is too old?
Well, these kids, what are you seeing? How old are these people? They're 20. How old is Justin Bieber? Is he 30 yet? Maybe just. I don't know, but it's hard to get in that business at that age, yes.
How did Michael Bublé come to your attention?
I made the Bublé deal because of Foster. Foster's been red hot with his records that he makes, and as you know, he's had tremendous hits. He sits there on a piano with 14 Grammys on it. You see it when you go in the house. And he says, when he said to get involved, he was just coming off Josh Groban, who was an oddball one anyway. He made that happen. And so I kind of bet on Foster. I didn't know where I was going to get with Michael. I didn't know what was going to happen. But he was so charismatic and so good live and so comfortable live that I thought, boy, we got a shot here. Because he's the entertainer. He's the best entertainer I've ever been involved with.
And success, of course, which your talent have achieved, used to be, how many millions have you sold in records, right?
Me?
No, you're each
Well, any
individual.
act, yeah,
People used
yeah.
to say, okay, you're at this level, you're at this level.
Yeah.
Well, the whole business has changed. It's not about record sales anymore. You've got social media, you've got streaming. Talk to me about how different the industry is.
It's all about the live business. And I'm blessed that I got artists who like to work live, are good live, and can sell a few records at the same time or sell product at the same time. But it's a different game now. Before we went on tour to push the record. Okay, the record went out, so we're going to get to your town, we're going to push the record there, we're going to go in and visit the radio stations all. But you know, Reagan came in and we used to have, you're a big radio operator in those old days if you owned 10 stations. So as soon as he deregulated the market, we now got 3 people in North America, in the United States, who are picking the records for all of the United States. The guys own 3,000 stations, stuff like that. So it's not the same way how you could go down to break a record out of Montana. There's a guy in New York saying, this is the playlist, and it goes right across the country. That's what they're playing.
So if you say the business case now is live performance,
Yep.
COVID must have thrown everybody for a loop.
Yeah. The bands, the big artists, they're okay. They got a lot of money. They don't need to go out on the road really, okay, outside of enjoying themselves. But the guys in the middle, like I feel for a lot of the bands in the middle, it's not fun out there right now. You're frightened of what will happen to you. You're frightened if you're going to catch something. You're in funny places that we shouldn't be. You know, if you're in the South doing a lot of work down there, it's a problem. It's just, you know, I'm talking to Sam Feldman, who works with me. He was out there with James Taylor and Jackson Brown, and you know, he said he got out of there, but the last 2 days, bang, some truck driver gets COVID, bang, somebody else gets COVID. The luck he had is it was 2 days left. So they got away with it. But, you know, we just saw KISS go down. We've seen so many acts canceled halfway through the tour. But, boy, it's nerve-wracking. Tests, and more tests. Cost us $10,000 a night to test people. Because we had to look at some of the building people, too. $10,000 a night, you know, that adds up pretty quickly.
Music has always been such a powerful force.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes used for commentary or protests. Mm-hmm. And you were involved, of course, with the Ethiopian famine.
Tears are not enough, yeah.
Yeah, tell me how that came together.
Again, you're Foster living in Los Angeles, watched We Are the World done, thought he could do something for Canada. So he thought, I got to get some Canadian guys. He knew Brian was a great writer. He phoned Brian, he phoned Jim Valance to help him work on the song. And because Foster's a musical guy, he's more a musical guy than a verbal guy, okay? And they came up with a song, and then he phoned me and said, listen, you got to get everybody for this thing. So that was my job. Okay, great. And went out there and put that whole thing together probably in 10 days from a dead stop. Okay, but you had the momentum from America. Okay, so when you phone Neil Young, he's at least going to take the call. If you phoned Anne Murray, she's going to take the call. You know, it wasn't. I wasn't beating people over the head to do it. They wanted to do it. Music wanted to do it. They did it in the UK too. They had a big one. They had some in Australia. So the musicians, it wasn't hard to get them. You just had to get them, and put it all together in 2 weeks, and we did it. Did the song. Didn't use anybody in the industry to help. We just, our office down here did all that lined up, and then the CBC jumped on, I guess, and somebody came in and filmed it, and away it went. But they all showed up, and nobody got paid to come here. I remember Platinum Blonde, some little act, asked me, well, how much do we get for limousines? I said, what are you talking about? Nobody's coming here in limousines. If you can't come here and get a cab, then you're not coming. They got a cab.
With the success of it, was there something deep inside of you that felt really good about trying to give back to the world and try to help and try to participate?
I was really proud of what we did. I was really saddened that it didn't do much. We lost most of it on the docks. You know, the Army got it, the military got it. It didn't go where it's supposed to go on. And I mean, that was the same thing. Bob Geldof, very upset about Live Aid, where the stuff went. A lot of stuff rotted on the docks. It was not very well run at the other end, can we say that? And so that was a bit of a drag. But it was the right thing to do, and it brought attention to it. And yeah, so I'm proud of that.
I noticed that Five for Fighting has just brought out a song about Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. So do you see that there's going to be more of this, that the music world is going to be participating in the public debate on these issues?
I'm very disappointed in the music world, because the music world, when we were young, was very active. Okay, when it was in the 70s. There were protest songs, there were protests all over the place. There were the music, they were singing about that. I mean, Neil Young, when that girl got shot at Kent State, had Ohio out probably 2 weeks out, or I bet you 3 days after it happened. He wrote it, put it out there, got it out there, and the protests continued. The young people were really active to change. They forced the change of a lot of things. People, they didn't like their brothers and sisters getting killed over in Vietnam, stuff like that. They were against it. And we sit here, what's going on in this country or in America? There's no protest from the music side. There's no uprising here. We haven't done anything that I can't see, and I think music has a voice, but it's not. We're not hearing it like we used to.
Well, you certainly have always had a voice and expressed your opinions, and you've done commentary on radio for years.
4,084 of them. I couldn't believe it.
And they're the rants. It's something you're getting out of your system.
Yeah, I enjoy doing that a lot.
When you were doing them, did you ever worry about the response that you got? Like,
Never.
Did you look at social media? Did you see what they were saying about you?
I don't look at social media ever. I don't listen to my own. I never listen to a reality check. I never heard one unless it's a fluke. I don't drink my own bathwater. I don't. I said what I said, and I got into trouble sometimes, quite big trouble. And the backing I had from the public was amazing and humbling in a way, because they wanted somebody to say what they were all thinking. Everybody's afraid to say what everybody else is thinking. Okay, that's a big problem to me. Nobody has a voice anymore, Carol. How many people voted this last election?
59%.
How many?
59%.
That's not very good. But it shouldn't have been anyway. It's a stupid election. But it's people are afraid to say what they think. And on talk radio, you should be able to say what you think. You were brought up with Jack Webster. You were brought up with guys like that who did that, knew how to do it well. You listened to, I probably heard many guys, commentators say the Americans still do it very well. Okay, but you don't dare do it here.
Cancel culture.
Pardon?
Cancel culture?
Yeah, cancel culture. Well, they're not going to, I guess I got canceled. But, but we're all gone from that station who had any talking about anything. But they were fair to me, because I watched what they did to the TSN broadcasters. They cut them off in the middle of a guy talking, gone. Okay, I went to him and I said, listen, I've been talking to these people for a long time. And I said, I don't want to just get tacked. They said, we'll let you go at the end of the month. I said, no, I'll get out of here Friday. It's Tuesday. And he said, but I want to be able to say goodbye to these people. And he said, okay, but don't go after the station. I said, I'm not going to go after the station. That's no class. I said, but I got to say goodbye to these people, which I did. I have never kept one reality check in my life. I think you've got to keep looking to the future.
Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bruce Allen, a true BC legend who developed and lifted the careers of musical giants who have kept our toes tapping.